All right, good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody again. This is our second Zoom meeting. Tonight is a meeting of the Finance Committee. It's July 15th. And on tonight's agenda, we have several interdepartment transfers to go through. When we vote on these, we'll be voting via roll call tonight. And we're going to get started. Well, actually, before we get started, Julie, there's probably going to be some questions, I would imagine, with some of these. So I'm sure you're going to be able to help us out and explain some of them. I'm going to use the description that we have on our sheet. And if there's anything that needs to be added, you can add whatever you feel like you need to add into that, okay?
Yeah, no problem. And if I can quickly, I don't know that many of you have had a chance yet to meet our new town accountant, Melissa Forg. She's here in Zoom. It's a weird way to introduce people, virtually, but that's the best we can do right now. So Melissa has been my assistant for a long time now, and recently she was promoted to the town accountant position. So you guys will be seeing a lot of her in the next year. So
welcome, Melissa. Congrats, and look forward to working with you. Okay.
So if you want to go through and read, and if anyone has a question, do you want to read through and put a holdout, or answer questions as they go, and then do one vote at the end so that you guys don't have to roll call all, 12 different items?
Yeah, I think that's how we'll do it. So I'll start with the first number one, and then we'll work our way all the way down to number 9, and then we'll take votes. If there's questions after each one, then we can address them as we go along. How's
Good,
that
and
sound?
there's actually 12, so if you flip your paper over, there's a couple more.
Okay, all right, all right, I didn't realize that. Thanks for making me aware of that. Okay. And it looks like we have a quorum tonight, so that is good. All right, so the first one is a interdepartment transfer from 4 different departments. One from the police department, which is going to be R&M building. One from the selectmen, which will be salaries, town administrator, town accountant, and treasurer / collector, salaries clerical. So the first amount from the police department that's going to be transferred is going to be $5,000. From the selectmen's budget, $29,700 will be transferred. From the town accountant's budget, $23,600. And from the treasurer collector, $22,030. And this is a total of $80,333, which is being transferred to the police department salaries overtime line item. The reason for this is in FY20, Chief Alves retired but continued to work as a consultant, which put his line item over budget. In addition, overtime was an issue as it took nearly 9 months to get the dispatch shifts covered with full-time officers. Until that point, police covered the 3rd shift as overtime.
Question?
Yes.
Is there a breakdown of that 80,330?
Yes. Yes, I broke it down. It's broken down into 4 segments. The first amount of money came from the police department R&M building.
Came from what it went into. The 80,330 is in a blanket overtime. How much was paid for the the police chief, the police chief, as far as OT? Was that broken down from the overtime from the
Julie,
police, say, on the 3rd shift?
Yeah, so I can get you guys a final year-to-date as well. And I apologize, normally we would have that. I didn't even think of it for tonight. But I'm going to pull it up here too. It's going to take me a minute. But in general, the police chief line item was over, I believe it was around $40,000. And the overtime was, it was originally like $220,000 that we had budgeted, and they spent $415,000. So they were massively overexpended in those budgets, but they did have some savings in other line items, which led to only the $80,000 total deficit. Offhand, again, the dispatchers had a lot of extra in their line item because they didn't fill those full-time positions until the end of the year. So I'll pull it up though while we're going through so I can give you actual numbers, and I'll make sure you guys get a year-to-date so you can see the breakdown of everything. But overtime was pretty high, $415,000.
Julie, is this going to be, is this a one-time thing, or is this going forward? Do you think the dispatch issues have been corrected? And is Chief Al still a consultant?
Okay, she froze. I can help you. He's no longer a consultant. We stopped that once the secretary came in. She took over and she was able to help.
Okay.
So we do not. That won't be happening anymore.
All right, and we've got the third shift no longer on police overtime, correct? We have dispatchers?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on the first transfer? Okay, we're going to go on to number 2. The second transfer is going to be going to the fire and EMS salaries overtime. It's coming from 6 different sources. The first source is fire and EMS, the energy line item of $10,000. Registrar of voters, salaries temporary, $6,000. Town council, legal and land court, $17,000. Town clerk, salaries clerical, $8,300. Streetlights, energy, $2,623. And pensions, Medicare, $6,600. And again, this is going to fire and EMS, the salaries overtime line item, for a total of $50,523. The reason is legislation to approve taking firefighters out of civil service was not approved until November, and the final officer wasn't hired until January. Until that time, the open full-time shift was covered with overtime. Any questions?
I guess the only question I keep coming up with, I'm assuming every place we're taking money out of this is a low impact item, but is there, I mean, if there's something here that's going to get affected by all the, these transfers on the where we're transferring from, I understand that they're not where the money's going to, it's obviously needed. But I guess if there's any kind of backlash, I'd like to know about it if anyone knows of anything.
Hey, Julie, this is just basically excess funds in those, right? We're through the fiscal year, so this is just the excess that sits in these accounts.
That's right. And so if you'll notice, the majority of them are salaries where we've already had our final payroll for FY20. So we know the money is an accurate amount that's remaining, or expense accounts that, have already had their final payment. So just to kind of go through quickly, I mean, obviously from what we've already done, police, they saved some money in their expense line for under number 1. That's why they were able to transfer some up to salaries. Selectmen, town administrator, and the accountant salaries. Those were both a combination of savings that the town got, when Melissa and I were doing the interim work and kind of covering the 3 positions with the 2 of us. The treasurer collector salaries that were saved were a combination of an employee, a union position that was, a non-union position that was filled by an employee at a lower step, since the employee had left in FY19 at a higher rate. And also we had a full-time clerk who left in, I believe, February, and we didn't fill that position in. And for FY21, we left that position out of the budget. So that's why you had those. Under number 2, fire, EMS, the energy, they knew that they would have a deficit in their overtime, so they worked really hard to try to save money in other areas. Energy was one of them. The registrar of voters, they had less people that were, there to help out this year. So their salaries had an extra amount in them. Town council, legal land court, our treasurer collector wasn't able to do tax title in FY20. She'll be doing it in FY21, so we had excess money there. Town clerk salaries clerical. One of the employees in the clerk's office was out unpaid for I believe 12 weeks, and that's where this savings comes from. Street lights, you'll see a few times. We've lowered this budget over the last few years because we had the LED lights put in, and we just keep seeing more and more savings. So we had a good amount, between 10 and 14,000, I believe, left in that line item, even though I think we dropped it to 25,000. And then pensions, Medicare, we had a bunch of salaries that we weren't paying for, so it led to a direct drop in the Medicare amounts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Julie, this is money that would otherwise go back to the general fund, correct? At the end of the year?
Yep, this would be free cash.
Right.
Thanks for clarifying that, Julie.
No problem.
Yeah, I wasn't under the impression that you were taking $29,000 from your salary to cover police overtime. So I figured there
So
was
thoughtful of you, Julie.
Hey.
I figured there was something else to it. So
Looking forward to next year.
Yeah.
all right, on to number 3, streetlights. So from the energy line item, they're transferring $4,536 to animal control to cover salaries director. And the reason being is the animal control officer was reclassified on the wage and classification scale after the budget was set by town meeting. Any questions on that one? No? Okay, next item, number 4, miscellaneous. And the amount is for $1,700, going from celebrations to the miscellaneous department description covering compensated balances. There were a number of turnovers in town hall this year that required the town to cover compensated balances.
Help, I don't know what that means, Julie.
When people leave, if they have vacation time,
Okay.
yeah, we have to pay them out. So we had more people than usual leaving town this year, employment with the town. So we exceeded what we had budgeted.
These are the people who retired and we're paying out. Is that it?
Retire or people who willingly left town. If they had vacation time, they would get this as a buyback
Gotcha.
upon leaving.
Okay, next, number 5, DPW Highway is transferring from their salaries permanent line item, $6,747 to CMAS salaries permanent position. The recycling center hours were increased in FY20, which resulted in an over expenditure in salaries.
Question. We still went over even though the recycling center was closed for a while?
Yeah, we did.
So we really would have gone over had COVID not happened.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Number 6 is from the Veterans Department, from their Veterans Benefits line item of the amount is for $30,000, and this is also being transferred to CMAS recycle removal. The recycling costs have increased and were not included in the FY20 budget. The FY21 budget was increased to cover the higher amount.
Veterans
I don't
benefit,
think this is a surprise to anybody.
guess
Any question?
I'm just curious why the veterans benefits was overfunded so much, I guess. I'm not.
So veterans benefits, it depends on the number of veterans each year that apply. And last year, the number was closer to $230,000 that we paid out. And on the backside of this, the state does reimburse us 70% of the costs. So we do see a reimbursement for the costs we pay out on the general fund side, but we still have to budget for it as an expense. So last year it was about 230,000, and this year it ended up closer to 200,000. So we had that 30 extra. And it's attributed to just less people applying for the benefits. Before you start the next two, I just want to clarify number 7 and number 8. They're both reserve fund transfers. So whereas these other ones are interdepartment, these two are reserve fund transfers. They haven't been expended yet. One of them, you'll remember we talked about before, the EMA server. So just to clarify that, they haven't been expended yet. They're waiting for approval. If they're approved, we'll be able to encumber them tonight and have them paid and purchased. So
How much do we have in that, Julie?
like 130 something thousand.
Okay.
It's high.
Okay, so as Julie was saying, the next two items are both from the reserve fund. Number 7 is in the amount of $12,000, and it is going to cover technology, additional equipment. This request is for a reserve fund transfer to purchase capital items. We needed upgrades to the alarm and camera systems in Town Hall and Parting Ways. The next, number 8, is also from the reserve fund in the amount of $5,000 going to EMA, maintenance and supplies. This request was also to purchase capital items. The EMA needed a new server as the old one was no longer working.
And so just to update you on that, I know last time there was a question about leasing the server versus purchasing. And I had the IT tech from EMA do some research, and it turns out the lease would be the same cost, plus we would have a maintenance agreement that we would have to enter into, whereas purchasing the server, all of the installation and costs are absorbed by our in-house IT people. So where it's the same, if not a little bit more, they still suggested to do the purchase. And just to clarify too, I know when we originally brought this to the finance committee, the server was kind of up and down, and lately it's really been falling apart. And I don't know that they've gotten it on since yesterday when it kind of crashed. So it's definitely an emergency.
Thanks for having that looked into. I think that was much appreciated.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, next item is number 9, streetlights. From the energy line item, the amount of $1,001. It's going to technology to cover salaries, network techs. There were additional expenses to complete a wiring project to get internet access to the fire station. If there are no questions on that, we'll go to number 10, which is also from streetlights, and the energy line item of the amount is for $615, and this is going to planning department, salaries clerical. The planning secretary had additional work hours due to the various meetings that had to be prepared and rescheduled due to COVID. So it's to cover that. Number 11 is building department, salaries clerical, in the amount of $1,867 being transferred to town building, salaries temporary. This is for summer help. Workers were able to start hours earlier in the year due to school closings. So more projects were able to be completed. And the last one, number 12, is from the water fund, engineering fees, the amount of $4,561. And it is going to be staying in the water fund to cover salaries, business manager. The employee's salary was reallocated between highway, water, and sewer, with a higher emphasis on water, which led to the line item going negative. So in total, we have a total amount being transferred of $198,880.
There's no discussion. I'll make a motion to accept this, right?
I'll second that.
Everybody in favor?
We're going to roll call it.
Yes, all right, so I'm a yay. John,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
and Bob,
Yes.
and Bob St. Jean.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes unanimously. So Julie, we have anything else to report, or we're gonna be good for a little while?
Yeah, you know, we're still taking it day by day. We're eagerly waiting for the state to give us some actual numbers for FY21 now that we're in it. They've said we won't have any, they won't have anything voted until the end of August at least. So for July and August, they're keeping our state revenues equivalent to the amount we received last year. But we're waiting. We're waiting to see what will happen. And, you know, the town has continued a spending freeze while we wait for those numbers, just trying to be as conservative as possible. Again, we built the budget for FY21 based on cutting as much as possible, so that we didn't have to, you know, do any crazy layoffs or cuts and, you know, require more from the taxpayers. So we're just waiting, and as soon as we hear anything, we'll let you guys know. And until then, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on in town otherwise, you know. PJ Keating, I'll mention quickly, the Board of Health did get to hire their part-time health agent. His name is Pat Hannon, and if you want to watch the selectmen meeting next week, they're going to be bringing him on, so at least you can become familiar with the face. But we're really happy to have him. He's already doing a lot of really great work over there. I know that was, you know, a big project that we've been managing for a while, was the, you know, the PJ Keating with the land use license and the soil permit. So he's doing a really great job so far with that.
I got a question, Julie. How much exposure do we have in terms of the school department? You know, the big thing I see is, you know, what the decisions that are made in terms of opening up the schools and how much they're opening and all of that, and or what types of, that could be a large impact on what we need to pay for and what we might be first on. What is there any news or any kind of more clarity on any of that?
You know, unfortunately, the schools are in a really tough situation right now. Right now, the superintendents are required to submit 3 different scenarios for how they'll reopen by July 31st. So the first scenario being, you know, everybody's in school. The second is a hybrid between kids being in school and remote work. And the third is all remote work. you know, and this is going to DESE, and just from past dealings and, you know, how everything has gone with the pandemic so far, I wouldn't be surprised if DESE took all of those recommendations and just said, okay, do what you think is best. And, you know, they didn't really give a whole lot of guidance in the spring, and I'm afraid they may not give guidance that's needed as well in the fall. So in the meantime, you know, I know the superintendent is working really diligently with all of her staff and the school committee. On the town side, we've offered to, you know, as many resources as possible to help assist them in any way we can. You know, we're one community, and you're right, everything impacts us as a town. So, you know, we'll be having a meeting over the next week, including, you know, certain town resources, the Board of Health agent, the fire department, the building inspector, people who, you know, can help in terms of having a collective discussion, and, you know, hoping somebody might have a good idea that can, you know, help make a meaningful plan. But they're in a tight spot. It seems like there are no good answers right now, and you know, many things are being questioned back to DESE without answers. So it's kind of it's going to be a last minute decision, as far as I can tell.
Is the
But
State Department of Education providing any type of advice with, do you know of?
not that I know. I mean, again, I'm not as involved as obviously the superintendent and the school committee, but nothing meaningful. You know, again, everything is right now put on the superintendent. Come up with a plan, you know, and I don't really know how you can come up with a plan that will work in any of those three situations. All of them have faults. So they're just left to this impossible task to come up with the scenarios and how they'll execute them. And there are so many things involved that you don't think about at first glance. You know, if they need to spread the students out so they have, you know, 6 feet in between the desks, for example. Now they have half of the desks in the classroom, and they need to store the other half, plus all of the other bookshelves and computers and items that are in the room, because they need as much space open as possible. So where do they store it? You know, where do the kids eat lunch? You know, what do you do with the other half of the kids? There are just so many scenarios. It's just impossible, I think, to try to plan out. But the DESE, as far as I know, hasn't really given much, if any, advice, just, you know, kind of throwing it on the superintendent. So
Any type of guidelines or anything like that they haven't provided? Are they just waiting for a plan to be submitted to them?
yeah, so they have given some guidelines. I know, I mean, I don't know everything, but offhand, one of them is a minimum 3 foot distance between desks. And so I know, you know, schools have asked, well, what if we do 6 feet? You know, 6 feet seems to be a safe distance that we've said for other things. If the desks are 6 feet apart, then can the kids take off their masks? And is that okay? Because 3 feet, you'd still have to have a mask on. And DESE hasn't really given an answer yet. They're still thinking about whether 6 feet is a safe distance for the kids to take off their masks, because they're also in a confined space for, you know, 7-8 hours a day, and there's a ventilation component to it where, you know, we know that the virus has an airborne, it's airborne, and it can pass in the air. So if the ventilation is inappropriate in the room, the 6 foot distance might not be safe to have masks off. And there are so many things. So I know that they have given some guidelines, like the 3 foot minimum, but I'm not sure the extent of it. I haven't been involved in the details.
I can give a little bit of an insight, just not from your town, but on the school board I sit on for the charter school. We've been going over this, and I mean, it really is, as Julie says, it really isn't a lot of guidance from the state. There is a 9-page CDC. You can find it on the internet, or I could forward it to people. There's a 9-page kind of basic how to put a plan together, but details are, you know, left up to pretty much every school in the country. I know that there's, the spacing is the big thing. We're probably going to look at more, we really are favoring our school keeping online and then going to a shorter quarter system so we can kind of react over to, quicker to maybe making changes. We're also looking at maybe doing more analog work, meaning sending work home. So the kids aren't doing all screen time. So there's more actual materials for kids to work with, so that we're looking into purchasing a lot of different things to help them resource-wise that way. Food programs still would need to be happening. Nobody's made any decisions. 3 things have been sent to the state, although the opening up in full is really not an option for anybody, I believe. But I was just hoping maybe someone heard any more clarity somewhere, but it appears to be, there's really not a lot.
If anything, too, from what I've seen, DESE has said, okay, come up with these 3 scenarios, and we'll give you a template to do it, but we don't have it ready yet. So it's due the 31st. They still haven't sent out the template. I think they're going to send it out this week or next week. So, I mean, it's impossible to me, that I give a lot of credit to all the schools that are, trying to work through this right now. It's nearly impossible, and I'm sure they're doing the most that they can. Nobody has the right solution, though, like the magic answer that solves all the problems. Every decision you make comes with, so many more issues. There's nothing that will really work out perfectly. So
the biggest problem is if actually somebody starts to get COVID in the school, and then you start shutting things down, and the exposure goes from there. So I don't know. We'll see where it lands.
yeah.
Well, I think at this point, unfortunately, it's not going to magically disappear. And I think we have to figure out a way to manage it and work around it as best we can. It's going to be a daunting task, no matter how you look at it. And it's going to be impossible to please everyone, because everyone's got an opinion on this. And it's going to be really challenging. But I think, we have to learn to live with this problem now as best we can and manage it. And I'm hoping that we can get these kids back to school. I mean, that's my hope. So, does anybody, with regard to tonight's meeting, does anybody have any old business to discuss? Any new business? Well, I know it was brought to, I think, all of our attention through an email that Mike St. Ange is not going to renew his appointment to the committee, so that's going to leave a vacant seat. So if anybody knows anyone who is looking to join the finance committee, I guess spread the word, because we'll have an open seat and we will need to fill it.
Yep. So the selectmen did at their meeting last night. They did make that announcement as well, and they have called for letters of interest. So if people are interested, send in a letter of interest to Town Hall, to the selectman's office, and we'll kind of filter through everything and see what we get.
That's great, Julie. I'd also like to just give a quick shout out and a welcome back to Selectman Dave Wonar. I'm glad he's back with us and the select board. I think with the times we're dealing with right now, having his experience will be pretty invaluable right now. So I'm glad he's back in the mix and look forward to working with him again.
Julie, on the same note, can you just let the selectmen know that I would like to re-up my appointment to the committee? I got a notification, I guess.
Oh yeah, they did. I think it was you and John Howcraft that were both up. They reappointed you. last night at the meeting. So I think you probably got a letter. You just have to get sworn in at some point by the town clerk.
Okay, I'll take care of that. Thank you.
Okay.
That's good to hear, Eric. We weren't going to let you leave anyway.
Thank you.
He missed his
Same thing for
opportunity.
you, John.
If he pointed out, he was too late. So sorry, Eric.
I had my handcuffs ready anyway.
There you go, Bob.
I'll
All right.
bring you more Kane's Donuts for you, Eric, okay? I'll
There
make
you
you.
go.
Excellent. There you go, Sue. Thank you.
And if there's no other business to discuss tonight, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a
Motion to
motion.
All in
Second.
favor? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting is adjourned. Enjoy the rest of the summer, everybody, and look forward to seeing you in the fall.
There you go.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Have a good
Bye.